The final panel of today on crowdfunding models. You all recognize me from a few minutes ago. I'm Chris Neidl. I'm your moderator again. This is actually something I've been directly involved in lately. One of ARC's partners, Milaap, is engaged in crowdfunding, so I've gotten to know quite a bit about it. And it's very fascinating when you think about crowdfunding in this space within the context of global crowdfunding. You know, I think we're projected to surpass $5 billion in total investment that's been sourced from the crowd, most of that through popular platforms like Crowdfunder, Indiegogo. But there's 600 actually different crowdfunders, and a lot of that has been for technology and creative projects in North America and Europe. But we've seen recently in the last couple of years, it's become part of the financing and investment strategy for social enterprises and organizations that are engaged in development-related work, and energy is counted among that. So what I'm happy about on this panel, we've got a great amount of diversity actually in terms of different ways in which the folks that are sitting here have engaged or are engaged in crowdfunding. On one level, we have basically our crowdfund platform users with Ajaita and Duquesne, who use that for a particular business need. And then we have the platform builders with Ryan and Sourabh from SunFunder and Milaap. So we're going to get to kind of get the perspectives from both those sides there, which will be really, really interesting. Again, the bios are in the panels, but I'm joined. I'm having problems with my mic again. Jeez. I think that might be a smart idea, just to not give everybody a headache. So I'm joined right to my left, Ajaita Shah, who's the co-founder and CEO of Frontier Markets, based in India. Duquesne Fednard is the founder and CEO of D&D Green Enterprise, based in Haiti. Ryan Levinson is the CEO and founder of SunFunder, based here in the U.S. And Sourabh Sharma is one of the co-founders and also the CEO of Milaap, which is based in India, but Sourabh's based in Bangalore. So let's go ahead and begin. Again, I think what we want to get into the very specific experiences that you all have had with crowdfunding, but really through that conversation, really see what is the role of crowdfunding, you know, next to all of these giant issues that we've been talking about, the huge financing needs. But let's start off like we did with the last panel. Just give us each of you can just give us sort of a 1-minute synopsis, really, of what you're doing, what your businesses are, what markets you're working in.
Oh, sorry, I forgot that I have a mic on. Thanks a lot, Chris. And I think it's just interesting for us to be involved with crowdfunding because we've never really done grant-based fundraising at all to date. We're a for-profit business set up in India. We do rural distribution of clean energy solutions, everything ranging from 1 watt to now 1 kilowatt utility solar systems. And our entire model is focused on after-sales service. So we have been setting up service centers, essentially, and working with multiple different manufacturers to identify products and sell to rural households through our own supply chain. We're primarily in Rajasthan and in Andhra, and generally have been kind of working on the full integration of the supply chain, so marketing, sales, after-sales service, and looking at supply chain financing as one of our areas of focus as Frontier Markets.
Hi, Duquesne Fednard. I am the CEO and founder of D&E Green Enterprise. We are a social enterprise that focuses on trying to find local solutions utilizing local resources. So our model really is going to a place and see what they have and use whatever resources that they have to try to solve energy issue that particular community may be facing. My involvement with crowdfunding was just really as a way to see obviously, in Haiti, our business was really impacted by the earthquake. So we lost our factory. So we were looking at ways to rebuild the factory, and crowdfunding was one of the fundraising strategy that we tap into to get funding to raise to rebuild the factory, one of our factories. Okay.
My name is Ryan Levinson with. Let me. You all hear me? Okay. No? Little? All right. I'm Ryan with SunFunder. We're a platform that finances solar energy projects in off-grid markets around the world. We see a really big market transformation happening in this space with new end-user financing models and new approaches that make solar affordable for households and other entities in communities that currently lack access to electricity. And many of those new models are highly capital intensive, where there's now solar companies all over the world that require more and more access to funding. And we've heard about that throughout the day, but particularly debt funding, working capital, and project finance. And that is our mission, is to help solar companies around the world working off grid markets have better access to affordable debt funding for their projects. We raise capital both through crowdfunding on sunfunder.com, and as I'm sure I'll talk about during this panel, we also raise money from beyond the crowd, from directly from private investors to fund projects.
Hi everyone, my name is Sourabh Sharma. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Milaap. We have been trying to do applying innovative ways of microfinancing basic needs, essential needs of people at the bottom of the pyramids, which is in line with UN Millennium Development Goals. So access to clean water, sanitation, education, training, skilling of youth, as well as providing access to clean energy. And the way we are doing innovative microfinancing is by raising funds online as well as offline from the crowd and applying creative ways of raising funds for these interventions. Yeah, the platform is around 2.5 years old, and we have raised dispersed just under $1 million in loans, all in India right now.
Great. So what I'm going to do is just break down the first part of this conversation, sort of have some questions for Ajaita and Duquesne, and then for Ryan and Sourabh, because again, what Ajaita and Duquesne have in common is that they were both businesses that decided to use a popular crowdfunding platform to raise investment for particular needs. So I want to get into a little bit of their experience doing that, and then we'll talk with Ryan and Sourabh about their experiences as platform creators. So just tell us a little bit. You just hinted at it a little bit, but it's kind of a two-part question. Just explain what the crowdfunding initiative you both executed was, but also why crowdfunding? Why not other sources of investment? Why was that what you resorted to or decided to use? So
Sure. So one of the big questions that everyone always asks us is when you're doing last mile distribution, who are you touching? And what echelon of the pyramid do they fall into? And everyone loves using the phrase bottom of the pyramid, but bottom of the pyramid by default are people that do not have access to regular income, and so therefore cannot really afford any solar solution that you offer. And consumer financing for them is also not available because they're not creditworthy to get bank financing or microfinancing. So what do you do when you're trying to reach what I call the ultra poor? People that just don't have access to income, and they still have the basic need of wanting to deal with the horrors of kerosene or the horrors of chimneys and deal with what they had, which is no other alternative when it comes to their lighting needs. And so for us, it was really important to address them as well. But we were very clear that as a for-profit business, that would be very difficult to meet our bottom line and actually use equity capital to get a return on that sale, which is why we wanted to look at alternative sources, and we wanted to really understand whether grants could fit into that role. And that was actually our primary reason of wanting to bring in crowdfunding, because we thought it was a different story that could relate to a larger mass or crowd without us actually spending, and we'll talk about this later, but the time and effort to actually fundraise, because we were told that this is a magic pill, take it and you'll get money to fund the children that you believe should get access to solar lighting. And I don't know if, Chris, you want to show that video now, or you want to show it?
Let's show it in a couple of minutes. I know exactly where to show it.
Yeah. So that was the reason for it. And we thought that what we could do is then create, a different type of access to capital to be able to raise money to then reach out to these underserved households without actually hurting our bottom line, but then being able to bring them into our ecosystem. So that was the premise.
One of the things we'll talk about, which Duquesne and Ajaita are willing to share, is that it's not in fact a matter of just sort of pressing send and then suddenly everything falls into place. It's actually it's quite a bit of work to do it. Duquesne, tell us your story as well, but also I think you and I have discussed you've had a very successful year in terms of fundraising. You've pursued various different forms of investment successfully. So give us a little bit of a rundown on that, and then where the crowdfunding piece fit in within the context of your broader.
Yes. So crowdfunding for us was a kind of the last result toward our fundraising effort. I like to say that I was very naive when I started our projects in Haiti. I'm from Haiti, obviously. What we are doing is that's we're providing solution to any places that's similar to Haiti, but because I'm from Haiti, it was natural that I start in Haiti. So we have 2 projects in Haiti, and one of the project was to actually create a stove that works for the market in Haiti, a cook stove, because we have a huge problem with deforestation and people are using charcoal, and we thought that was a very easy way to actually have a product that is tailored to the market that can solve some of the issues that NGOs in Haiti has been trying to solve for the longest. And we thought that since we have a very innovative business model, social business that's market-based, that's can be profitable, then it should be easy for us, giving that Haiti, giving that the earthquake and all the money that flowing to Haiti, that it should be very easy for us to actually raise the funding that we need to take that project to scale. And so we've learned the hard way that was not actually the case. It was extremely difficult, and simply because we were a social business. And so the NGO were not looking at us, say, okay, you can use our money because we are for profit. The traditional fundraising was also, so we're not that profitable to be able to attract, equity investors or even debt, financing. And we're left with the social kind of investors, and most of them were not looking at Haiti because there was so much money going to Haiti. Right. So we were kind of like, okay, well, we have this great project and nobody wants to provide us with the financing that we need to take it to the next level. So, obviously, once you're an entrepreneur, you're faced with those issues, you're always trying to figure out exactly innovative way to go around them. So we find ways to go around them, and toward that process, crowdfunding become one of the tools that we use to actually reach that last mile with our fundraising, because we had managed to raise the funding that we need to buy the other equipment to kind of invest in marketing and working capital, and we just needed a small amount to complete the rebuilding of our factory. And we thought that we can actually, giving our story, giving the impact, giving the human touch, that we could actually use that to crowdfunding. And that's where we actually learned quite a bit of lesson, and I'll be more than happy to share with people.
Yeah, so you both chose Indiegogo, which is, I think, the second leading platform. I want to just go into what exactly you did, what was entailed, but first just tell me, was there a reason why Indiegogo and not one of the other platforms?
So yeah, I had my intern actually look at 17 different crowdfunding platforms, because everyone claims to have the highest number of hits for people to give you the maximum use of that platform. But what was interesting was it was between the most famous, obviously, is Kickstarter and Indiegogo. And what was interesting about Indiegogo was they said, look, if you aren't successful in raising your full commitment, you still get to keep whatever you raise. You just have to pay a little higher premium. Whereas Kickstarter would say you made the effort, but you didn't reach your target, so therefore you get nothing. And that was really tough. And so that's why I think that was the drive to go to Indiegogo. And I think Indiegogo also did a strategic campaign at SoCap last year, which just made everyone more excited to get involved into that campaign. And that was kind of the reason, basically.
Yeah, and for us, choosing Indiegogo over Kickstarter was really based on our research. And Kickstarter tends to be gravitated toward more tech companies, product-driven kind of campaign where you have something and you get something. And Indiegogo is more open to other type of funding. Since our campaign was not really focusing on creating a product per se, but really raising funding for a factory that we wanted to rebuild, it made sense for us actually to go with Indiegogo, and that's how we choose. But obviously, we've done a lot of research. There's so many things out there, and there's so many claims. We did our research, and we thought Indiegogo would probably be the best fit with what we were trying to do.
Well, there's also an assumption there, right? I think a lot of these crowdfunding platforms tell you that we have 1 million people that come to our website daily. You'll get to access those 1 million people because you have a platform now. What we don't understand at that time is that actually there's also 100,000 other projects that are trying to access that same platform. Right. And so what is the work that you have to do to actually grab the attention of that 1 million people, because the platform really isn't doing anything to make that happen?
Yeah, and I want to talk about that, but I think one of the things that's really interesting is that you're right, Kickstarter is more associated with creative projects and technology, but I was looking at Indiegogo yesterday to look at what is the sort of range of things that have been very successful, some of them have 500 times of what they were asking for, they raised. And there's a lot of technology products there. So just one of them that was, I think, the top
Right.
one, it was called a Thermador laser helmet, was the name of it. And it was for the follically challenged. It was some helmet that stimulates there. So I looked, that was kind of a pattern there. So I wondered, for both of you, using this, people coming to that platform, it's a donation, but it's not necessarily coming from a philanthropic impulse. It's, in fact, it's coming from, there's not a profit motive, but there's a consumption motive. It's for people, the Thermador helmet people who don't, they're not people who have a empathy for the follically challenged globally. They might want to have that product. It's almost like a pre-selling or pre-buying type of thing. And you were both doing things where people coming to that platform were not going to be directly partaking, and you were using it for essentially as a charitable. Did you find that to be a challenge or a limitation?
So I think that so this is I don't know if you did the webinar when they kind of tell you how to maximize the use of their platform, but
we use a consultant.
Okay, that's interesting. That's even more interesting. Okay, because I thought about looking at a consultant. Okay, so we did a part of the webinar when they tell you how to maximize the use of this campaign. They tell you that the most important thing is to remember that these people are giving you money to get something, and so that get something is really where the incentive structure comes in. So how do you create incentives to attract people to come to your site and then actually pay for your whatever campaign you have? And so this is where the incentives become interesting, because it's saying, how do you engage them physically? Now, when you're sitting in India and you're talking about serving rural households that even people in Bombay can't reach, how do you get someone in Georgia to put in $25 even to consider wanting to be a part of this system, right? And I think that that's where the incentive structures become interesting, and it immediately made me remember those commercials for Christian, the Christian sponsor a child charities, right? Receive a photo of the child, get to hear a story, and then based on how much you donate, you can get a free light in our situation, or you can come to India and see the kids yourself, or get photos and updates from them. But it was funny because when you started thinking of the psychology behind who would put $5,000 to actually come to India, my advisors immediately said, do not promise them that you're going to pay for their flight, because those people probably get first class tickets. So you're not going to be able to afford them coming to India. Right. So it was really interesting to go through what are the gifts. So what is the consumption product that you're essentially providing if they're not actually taking the product themselves?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us also was a lot of thought was put in terms of the incentive that we were providing. Because at the end of it, we wanted to raise money and not just raise money to spend money to bring somebody to Haiti and come see the factory and so forth. So everything that we were looking at, okay, if we were successful at getting X amount, how much would we be comfortable putting toward that incentive to just giving back. So it's very interesting in a sense that we thought despite that we knew going toward that path, it wasn't going the typical kind of we are not the kind of campaign that people were going to draw to. But we thought if we did a good job enough, we advertised it enough, we put the right effort into it, and so we really polish our story, that we could actually succeed where others have not succeeded. So and again despite those effort that we put forward, we did not reach the level that we wanted to reach, and that just tells you exactly this is something that oftentimes very very tailored to a particular kind of type of projects, and oftentimes people want to get something and be part of that kind of new technology, kind of receiving that first prototype thing. And with our project, there was nothing like that they can receive except you just contribute to better the life of maybe millions of people, and the message doesn't resonate the same way.
It's the wrong venue, wrong expectations, perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Now, what is it that you had to, again, what was attractive, you just mentioned when you were at SOCAP or SciCalp, I couldn't remember what you said. This seems like something that is a low barrier, low cost way of reaching tons of people. What did you actually have to do? What is the investment in time and bandwidth that what did you produce for this, for your program? What did you put into it?
So we worked on creating a video,
Okay, which we'll show in just a moment.
which we'll show in a moment. But and so again, coming from a for-profit background and used to raising money with investors and being very clear about in-sector milestones and deliverables, this is a very different look into the work that we do. Right, you were selling poverty suddenly, and it was kind of tough to come to terms with the fact that you're selling poverty. So even making this video was a little painful because you really were directing a little bit, right? Because you had to win the hearts and minds of people that really just aren't sitting in this room, so it was the video, it was, going through your connections, so Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, having to I am not a person that Twitters at all. I'm someone who's always in the field. And so it's just really tough to have to actually be in touch with hashtags and try to figure things out and get people to endorse you. And trying to get other friends to then put the message across into their platform. So, the irony for us was that LinkedIn was more successful than anything else. And again, I think it was because sector-specific people that are connected to me understood what I was trying to do, and they were ready to put money in without thinking about it. So, what the campaign offered, which was the 1 million people that I would have otherwise not known, we just never reached them because we didn't know how else to kind of take it to that next level.
Yeah,
so
getting beyond the friends and family.
The friends and
the first
family,
degree.
right.
So let's actually watch that video because it does actually, it's a good synopsis of what you were trying to do, but it also, it's a type of a piece of material that is a sort of standard issue for an Indiegogo campaign.
Right.
So I want to kind of interpret that a little bit in terms of why you made it the way you did.
Right.
Increase a bit more.
Oh, it'll start.
You don't have to travel far in India to encounter energy poverty. When it gets dark in these places, it stays that way. Due to unreliable or non-existent electrical access, children are forced to study in near darkness. Kerosene lanterns and candles are hardly suitable. Kerosene emits toxic fumes when burned, and if a lamp falls, can cause severe burns or even incinerate the home.
They put this really sad background music in it.
Do the works. Wait till you see the solar music.
Half are children under the age of 5. It's time to turn off the past and light up a brighter future.
Oh.
Join our cause to create a brighter tomorrow for children like Ravi, Anil, and Gudia. With just $25, you can give a child in India a light for life, a chance to complete an education and lead a fulfilling life. With your support, we can light the lives of thousands of promising Indian students and ensure a safer, cleaner, and brighter future.
This is lagging. Yeah. I don't know how that happened on this as well. Yeah.
So that gives you a sense of the campaign, but it's an approach that you took in terms of how to represent this. And, in preparing for this, and Sourabh will talk about this as well, because you use video as a really key part to engaging viewers. But there's a lot written about this. There's a science to this and how you should package this and how you should present it. So I'm curious, and then we'll move on a bit. But if both of, because you made a great video as well. It's actually a really, really good video.
Yeah.
tell us about, what went into that in terms of how it is that you decided to frame and why you made the choice of making it the way you did.
Sure. So I think that so when we do field visits for investors or donors or whoever comes, and having come from a microfinance background, I've been very much used to seeing tailored to staged microfinance scenario field visits where women are perfectly lined in in their circles, and everyone's kind of giving out their loans, and the field staff is so well attuned because it's a show, right? You're putting on a show for someone who doesn't understand what this is all about. And I think that was kind of the same guidelines that we were given to understand what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to give the message about why solar lights are important. So we knew we were doing a campaign for kids. We knew we wanted to give these solar lights for free to these children. So a lot of it was about having to be very extreme and obvious about how big the challenge is when it comes to kerosene. And then it was having to be very obvious about how wonderful solar is, and how safe solar is, and children can use it and read it immediately. So simple messages, like anyone who sees this should be able to say, oh, kerosene bad, darkness bad, solar good, children get to read. And so and it was that basic that we had to kind of create that video in a short amount of time and make it a little dramatic. I'd love to hear Duquesne's theory on this, and then I'll tell you the challenges that came from the video in terms of the messaging that comes out of it. But
yeah, I'd like to hear that. And again, you hired a consultant. And we talked. You were actually satisfied with their strategy, but
So basically, I know I don't use Twitter. I have a Twitter account, but I don't use Twitter. I have a Facebook. You never see me on Facebook.
Right.
So I know obviously to be successful. After reading how people get to raise money through crowdfunding, these are the tools that they use. You have to be on Twitter all the time. You have to be on Facebook, and you have to be really that kind of new media. And I'm not. I'm on usually in the field and doing things. I don't have the time to do that. And I thought okay, well then somebody, if this is the way to be successful, then I need to get somebody to do that for me. So we hired a consultant, and we kind of spent 3 months in designing what the message should be, how the page should look like, what kind of picture should we put on it, the video that we want to create, how we want to create it, and what kind of emotion that should play to it, what kind of music, all that. So all that is really planned because this is what the consultant is hired to do, and we work on those things together. So really. Again, it's really tapping into the emotion of the people that you're trying to reach, by telling them, okay, well, while we are a private company, we are a for-profit company, a social business, but we still do need your money to get to that next step. And again, I felt, a bit uncomfortable as well, in terms of really trying, to sell that. And I have had, some kind of, criticism, not criticism, but, some kind of, really off comment, which because I'm not naturally somebody that goes and asks. I always try to make things happen. Not really having to ask for funding, and it was very interesting and very humbling an experience for me to actually go to that process and kind of learn how this whole world
So let's come back to this in a moment. But two big takeaways. It sounds like that there's more entailed.
Oh, yeah.
And it's also the leading platforms are not necessarily the appropriate or right venues for this type of pitch.
Definitely. And I think one of the things they tell you up front is that in order for you even to get noticed by the user on the platform, you need to raise 30% through friends and family. That's the first kind of thing that you need to keep in mind. It's not you put it and people's gonna pour money.
Right.
So you need to actually reach out to people that and try to convince them to do that. Once you get to 30-40%, then that's when the platforms start okay, can we do something to drive more people toward your campaign?
Right.
And if you never reach that threshold, then you never get the attention because, as you said, everybody on that platform, every campaign is competing for the very same kind of traffic.
Great. So let's move on to Sourabh and Ryan, who have developed, again, as Ryan mentioned, crowdfunding is a component of their overall fundraising strategy, but one that's very visible because it's built into your website. If you could explain, both of you, So why crowdfunding again? What is special about crowdfunding that meets a particular need that's not being met by other types of finance, both in the context of microfinance and then also getting working capital loans in Africa?
Yeah, so in terms of microfinance, we saw that all these basic needs were traditionally being funded by donation and grant money, and microfinance was not really addressing these. And one of the primary reason was the capital which they were getting was very high cost, and they could not be used for, building a toilet at the interest rates which they were available at. So the interest rate which the borrower had to pay had to be very, very low. So that was one reason why we decided to go for crowdfunding. The other aspect is also the flexibility of the capital. So the loan has to be customized to the needs and cash flows of the borrower. So if he's undergoing a training program, he cannot pay any repayment while he is undergoing the training. So his repayments start only after 3 months or 4 months when he's done the training, gotten the job. So this kind of flexibility only comes with patient capital, and crowd and everyday individuals provide a very good source of that patient capital, because everyday individuals are looking at ways to do good, and till now the avenues which are available to them have been a traditional donation model. So people who come to our platform are who's putting in that $100, $200 are essentially putting an amount which is not pinching them, which they don't really need it back at any point in time. So they are ready to wait on it in terms of longer repayment rates, repayment periods. So 18 months, 24-month kind of repayment periods. They're also ready to wait on it in the delayed start of repayments as well. So all these aspects kind of really pointed that we need to go to the crowd to
Can you give, yesterday you were talking, can you just give an example of, you have the different verticals: education, vocational training, water, sanitation, and energy. Is there, in terms of the delayed payment, there's particular products that's particularly significant for? I think in education you're explaining that, right?
So yeah, vocational training has a moratorium period where, for the first, because typically a 3-month training period. So during that period, he or she, the student, does not have the capacity to repay because he's just ending the training. So he doesn't do any repayments during that period, and only after he completes the training, gets a job, gets his first salary, then he starts the repayment. So all these kind of flexibilities cannot be built in traditional microfinance models, or it's tough to build in because the cost of capital is very high. So that's why we went to the crowd to raise it.
Ryan.
Yeah, so like many of the solar clean energy entrepreneurs in this room, we're a startup company. And in the beginning of launching a new business, it's hard to raise money. You're not proven. And we're trying to be a solar finance company. And it could have taken us 2 years or more to go around trying to raise this $10 million fund from private investors with no track record to finance solar projects. We didn't really need to go through that process with crowdfunding. We could spend several $1,000s, build a platform, find a solar company that needed a loan to fund their projects. We started really small, $4,000 loan to a solar company in the Philippines, and that provided solar energy for 100 families. And we just, in a few months, got the website up and funded our first project. And then that gave us the leverage to build some new relationships with other solar companies, and it really was a great way to get started. And now, so crowdfunding in one sense unlocks a new source of capital that has always been on the sidelines, which are individuals. And we all know that new sources of funding need to be brought into the system. So that's one thing that crowdfunding does. But for our particular case, it's also, in a sense, given us the ability to now go to even larger sources of capital and make that case. So now that we've done 10 crowdfunding projects and have funded $130,000 of loans and have a 100% repayment rate, crowdfunding is, in a sense, starting to prove in a small way that these types of loans and solar and off-grid markets is indeed bankable. And it's now easier for us to raise even more money.
Yeah, that's hugely important for both. I mean, we're not going to crowdfund electrification for 1.3 billion people, but it's money that's able to come in that's supremely flexible and patient, and you can demonstrate the viability of a model and then leverage that to bring in other funds. I know, Sourabh, you've actually, so Milaap has been for 3 years now, 2010, and you have some examples actually where you were able to provide debt, and the experience of that was leveraged in order to bring in other investments for some of your partners. Is that right?
Yeah, so I mean, for us, it's very important the kind of partners which we work on ground, that they are kind of startups in microfinance. So they're trying to do something innovative. So they're trying to give loans for, one of our partners is Guardian, which does exclusively water and sanitation loans. So they are not able to raise money from banks, or even if they raise money from banks, the cost is very, very high. And therefore, that eats into their margins because there's only a certain amount of interest rate which a borrower can pay for a solar light or for a toilet, right? So that gets squeezed into, it makes their own model economically unfeasible. So what we did is basically provide them that catalytic capital initially, which helped them to get to a point where the same bank provided them the loans at much, much lower interest rates and made them much more feasible economically in terms of their margins. So, and that's really the role which we are trying to play, to partner with these organizations which are at pilot levels, who have done successful pilots but are trying to commercialize, trying to scale up, but commercial capital is too expensive to them, and take them with us to a level where financial institutions are interested in them at cheaper sources of capital. Yeah.
Something else that I think is unique about crowdfunding that makes it very suitable for clean energy in off-grid markets is that the projects are quite small. And even though there are solar companies that need massive amounts of capital, millions of dollars, when you look at the actual activities on the ground that they're doing in a particular village or a single microgrid project, you're not talking about megawatts like you are here in the U.S. or even kilowatts. You're talking about watts. And crowdfunding is very suitable to projects in those smaller sizes. A $25,000 or $50,000 microgrid projects, perfect for crowdfunding.
So it's meaningful for the person because they're proportionate to each other. You actually put this amount of money in, and it actually can make a really big impact in a particular.
Can I just make a comment on leveraging that? Because I think that's a really good point. Like, I mean, we targeted like 5,000 kids, and that was really silly on our end for different reasons. But we did successfully raise money for 500 kids. And those 500 kids, because of that constant engagement, it attracted nonprofits and even ministers in India that I didn't ever know would actually care about these things to come and leverage. So a lot of people have given leverage commitments based on what we raised. A lot of organizations want to now use us to do this for their state. And suddenly corporates are getting ready for Diwali CSR, and they're kind of like, well, Diwali's around the corner. This is a great video. Let's leverage what you've created. So I think the crowdfunding platform gives you leverage to do a lot of other things, and maybe we just need to understand what that is.
I mean, even the videos that both of you produced are great pieces of material, and there were probably a lot of eyeballs that hit them, even though people that didn't decide to lend. So that's a value that's independent of the money that you bring in for it. But so
I wanted to make a comment on that because, again, piggybacking on what you just said, while we did not raise the funding that we need to the crowdfunding, but we thought also the positive aspect was the fact that we've done the work and the effort to publicize it actually pay off for us in other ways. We've gotten very great press, and until today I'm getting lots of interest in the work that we are doing. People are coming and offering different partnership, different support that we got through that marketing effort that was behind the crowdfunding that we would not have gotten if we would just say, oh, we're just gonna push that, because we did it pushing the crowdfunding, did not get the money, but we get a lot more kind of in terms of name recognition in the market and a lot of stuff that we don't know exactly what the value is, but certainly it was very interesting for us.
Well, I want to take a question from the audience in a second, but before we do that, so the problem that they described about getting beyond friends and family and pushing this out and finding who are the people that this is going to appeal to? Maybe, again, as you admitted, maybe it was the wrong platform. That wasn't, you've designed platforms that are explicitly focused on people that want to actually donate. But can you tell us about your strategies and how they've evolved? I know SunFunder is a much younger company than Milaap, but how is it that you actually engage those lenders and pull them in and grow that pool of people? How do you find them, and how do you?
So very very early in our life cycle, we realized that the best things which work is when you give the power to the people themselves. So our most prolific lenders who were coming back to the site again and making some more loans, we gave them an excuse or a reason to kind of create their own fundraiser. So they did it, running marathons, or they did climbing mountains, And they ran these fundraisers completely independently, in the sense that it would take us 30 minutes to kind of set up the fundraiser for them, and after that the entire $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, whatever they were raising was through their own marketing. We did not have to spend any time, effort in marketing, and the 50 or 25 or 100 lenders or contributors that got on those fundraisers, they became Milaap users. And when they started getting repayments on those loans which they made on someone's fundraiser, they came back and made more loans. So now we have kind of tried to make it into productized it. So every time that we try to find some hooks, whether it's Women's Day or it's Mother's Day, or last year in Independence Day we ran a campaign called Adopt an Entrepreneur, where we said you take the responsibility to entirely fund this person through your personal network. And that we realized people got very, very passionate about, and they would activate their own social networks and kind of raise money for it. So we repeated that campaign this year, saying adopt a student, and that got even much higher hits as well. So we realized that fundraisers work very, very well in terms of getting lenders on board. The other thing which we are trying out as a strategy is, instead of expecting everyone to come to our website and making loans, we kind of put our hooks where there are already e-commerce transactions happening on the website. So if someone is buying a book on Amazon, you add $1 to help someone read this book. So taking that principle but applying it more and more intelligently. So we are in the next 2 weeks going to be on the fourth largest e-commerce site in India, where apart from other products which are sold on the site, we will have fund someone for clean water, fund someone for a solar lantern. And this is the great part about it, is that there's going to be no commission charged from us on this product, because usually these e-commerce sites charge a huge commission when you sell these products. But in our case, because it's a loan and 100% needs to go to the end borrower, they kind of said, we're going to take away all the commission which we charge. And that is the kind of sort of distribution and channel partnerships you need to do to kind of get more and more people engaged.
And again, Ryan, it's a much younger company. I think you financed 10 projects. Do you have an approach beyond just trying to solicit individual lenders to come to your website? Have you more actively attempted to do sort of more creative, I guess, campaign or champion-based type of thing?
Yeah, we've done some campaigns. We haven't done any paid marketing, really. So that's not part of our strategy at this point. A lot of it has been working to get our existing lenders really engaged. So through email campaigns and social media and through the repayments, as you were saying, like that's been the big thing. It's almost like a snowball, because you make the loan terms on our platform are very short, typically 1 year, with quarterly repayments. So as soon as that first repayment comes in, the lender gets some money back. And then over 50% of our lenders have been recycling those funds into another project. So then every time new repayments come in, and before you know it, you're having repayments every month. The more they're engaged, the more we're able to fund projects, and that for us has been huge.
And just one comment I want to make on the Facebook and social media, right? So it's very, very important that social media is something which comes to you very naturally. So for both me and my co-founder Anuj, Facebook, we are like Facebook addicts. I am like a Facebook addict. He's unhealthily addicted to Facebook. And yeah, so when we registered our domain name milaap.org, the first thing which we did is create a Facebook page and did a redirect from Milaap to our Facebook page. And for the first 3 months, there was no website, just a Facebook page. We were not even raising money. We were just putting up, what we are going to do and things like that. And for me, Twitter is something which comes very, very naturally. And we have actually done fundraising through Twitters. Like, people tweet about it, and then it leads to someone making a loan. And we are very prompt when people ask questions about Milaap on Facebook, and people are very surprised that Milaap is very prompt on Facebook, but that's just because I'm all the time on Facebook. It's something which comes very naturally. So I think that's something which has to come from founders, or it should be in the DNA of the company.
But can I just say something to that? Is that, that works really well when you're in a business where you're sitting in an office where you have internet and you have infrastructure, right? For folks like us that are in a rural field, it doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm dealing with entrepreneurs, with angry customers, with chaos, like floods. And so when I get a tweet, that's not the first thing I think about, right? And so the reality is that I think that what the value proposition that the founders on the field side offer is content, right? It's photos, it's stories, it's content. But I think what we need to make this stronger is actually then work with the folks that do understand social media, that understand the technology platform, and we provide the content to them, and then they actually use it more effectively. I think that's maybe the
in our office, there's actually a team split. There's the field kind of team, which is completely on the field side, and they do zero, anything to do with internet, which is my third co-founder, Mayu. And the other side is the marketing team, which is me and basically a bunch of other guys who are only thinking about, fundraising all the time.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to bring up, and then I will put it to the audience because time is ticking. But when you compare, a value proposition, I guess, to someone who would give to either of your sites or any 4 of these sites, there's a very big difference between a donation and a loan. It seems it has built-in engagement to it. I get my notifications for you that every month someone's paid, and you're reminded of it. But the fact that you're getting that money back is a bit of it's kind of a feedback that there's project quality there, that you're delivering in a really, really sort of fundamental way. For both Ajaita and Sourabh, actually, there's a very high level of cynicism, I would say, in India among potential donors, because there's statistics that more than half of all foreign aid is misused. There's 300.5 million NGOs. So there's a lot of wariness, I think, to give money. Do you find that a lending, I guess this is maybe you can also speak to it, but do you find that the lending model, because it has that return, is more attractive to an Indian giver?
It's a much harder product to sell. So basically, if you're a donation platform, someone is ready to put in $100, he will ask you 5 questions, he'll put in that $100. If you tell him it's a loan, he will ask you 50 more questions, and at the end of the day, he will still put in that $100 only. It's not like he's going to increase that, 100 to 500 or whatever. So that's the challenge, and I said during the morning, people don't understand as a mental thing what is a philanthropic loan. They either, do charity, which has some religious connotations to them in terms of attaining karma or whatever, or they do investments, where they get market returns. But if you tell them that I'm going to, please give me your money and I'm going to return it to you every dollar, month over month, it kind of doesn't fit them. So it kind of takes time. But the good part about it is that once someone comes on the platform, starts seeing repayments, that guy is hooked. Yeah. So
I can attest to that directly. But yeah, go ahead.
So as you guys know, we're promoting D-Light lanterns, right? And so it's $12 is the actual base MRP cost of the D-Light. But if you notice, we're raising $25. And the $25 has a lot of hidden costs to it, right? It's the cost for the campaign, which is 7 to 9% of all the money raised, right? It's delivery costs, it's impact tracking costs, it's actually then, the cost of getting these stories from the field and providing it back to the household. When you've traditionally seen lantern distribution for free, especially in India, there's a big, the cynicism that you're talking about exists, right? Mm-hmm. Because Terry tried this and others tried this, and, our big story was we don't want to be another free distributor, right? And we wanted to actually make sure that we had the right systems in place so that we would, in fact, show you 5 years from now this lantern is still being used. But to have to explain that and not being able to show that on the video was a nightmare. Mm-hmm. So we actually did have to follow up with so many emails to people being like, let me break down what the costs are and let me be very true to what we're trying to operate. But you don't have, how do you do that at scale? Which is, I think, one of the biggest challenges.
The nature of this tool is something that's slick and a narrative, and you can plop it on there, but there's a lot of complexity concealed there, and people feel you're maybe not necessarily being forthcoming.
It's always hard, once you are trying to do the very same work that the NGOs are trying to do, but you're trying to do it on a market-based approach. Because
in our case, something which is hidden from everyone is that we absorb the transaction fees. Someone when puts $100 on the platform, we only receive 97, but we have to return back $100. So we put $3 from our own side, because if we start exposing things like these, saying there's a transaction fee, so you add $3 to it, whatever, it will get more and more confusing. You just want to make it as simple as buying a book online, Yeah. So
do we have questions from the audience here? Let's go ahead and start right here. We have a.
You're the mic.
Were you one, Carl?
Yeah, I wasn't the first one.
Hi, Nara UN Foundation. I had a question about the regulatory issues with the loans. I know with India particularly has a lot of barriers. I know, for example, Kiva, it took them 3 years before they could even start lending projects in India.
6 years.
And with 6 years, okay, even worse. For Milaap, if an American, for example, wants to lend through your site, what are the regulatory issues that you face?
No
And
issues.
also, same for SunFunder with other countries.
Yeah, no issues. So basically from design stage, we were very clear that we should be able to raise global capital, and therefore we structured our entities in such a way which were aligned with the regulations of RBI. And we even spoke to Premal and Matt saying these are the ways to do it, but it's just that when you're not yet started, it's much easier for you to have a structure in place which is aligned with compliance. So from day one, we were able to it took us time to get those permissions from the RBI, but after that it was all smooth sailing. Yeah. So now anyone can lend on the platform anywhere in the world, and expat and take it out as well, based on the loan period of the borrower. There's no 3-year lock-in which Kiva lenders have. Yeah.
Like Ryan's response to that, but just quickly, can you tell us actually what is the breakdown right now in terms of what percentage of your portfolio is coming
Yes,
from abroad?
50% has come from outside of India. Yeah, so we are just under $1 million, and we have got $500,000 raised outside of India.
So we haven't yet launched our first India projects, but we're very, very eager to, and I'm very eager to learn everything that has just been said here. We're determined to not let it take 6 years. But there's another regulatory issue that is also very relevant here, and that's security laws and how they impact whether or not you're able to provide a financial return to crowdfunders. And that's something we struggled with because we're trying to move ahead with a commercially oriented financing model here. So we're not making grants to solar companies. We're not making zero interest loans. We charge interest, and we would love to provide some of that interest back to our lenders on our platform and make this more of a for-profit lending experience for them. But that's an incredibly challenging thing to do.
So there's just been a big break. I think Monday is literally when general solicitation is permitted, right, under the Jobs Act. I'm sorry. That's changing though right now. I mean, I wanted to talk about that a little bit later, but we might as well address it now. I mean, the laws and regulation have changed.
So is that for accredited investors?
It is for accredited
Right.
investors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's only for U.S. citizens,
Right,
tax
right.
residents.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And most people are not accredited.
Right. Yeah.
So for that reason, we provide essentially zero interest loans on our platform, where you put in $100, you might get back to your account maybe $103 or $105. All of it can be reinvested, but only $100 can be
Right.
taken out. And when you raise money from accredited investors outside of crowdfunding, then the regulatory challenges go away for the most part.
I think there's another part of the challenge also on for-profits taking in the grant money that's coming in from the crowdfunding platform. So, when you have foreign money coming into India, you have to get KYCs. There's all these different approvals, and so one of the things that we've been trying to understand from Indiegogo is how do we actually what code do we use to bring this money in, and then what is going to be the effects of grant money coming into a for-profit business? Are we again losing 40% of that capital? So there's a lot of other challenges that I think that are just not yet addressed in terms of looking at crowdfunding as a solution for capital coming into for-profit businesses.
Let me just say one thing too that I should mention. Your campaign ended earlier in the summer, and yours is still going on, right? Okay.
How much did they raise?
It's 500 lights we've done around. So today officially, I checked on my Twitter, was $7,500 was what we've raised so far in 27 days.
We raised $3,000, and the goal was to raise $50K.
I want to provide a little context because there's another half of this story, and it's just fascinating to me to watch the fact that I have come at it from one side when I used to run the Sierra Club. There is a tidal wave of opportunity here, because what has happened is that this kind of giving is disrupting and has largely disrupted the long-established U.S. charitable model, in which you gave money to an organization for a purpose, and you didn't, if you were giving $25 or $50 or $100 or even $500, you didn't have any control. You said, I trust the Audubon Society. That worked in mail. When television came along, lots and lots of people tried to raise money on television, but the only ones who succeeded were people like Save the Children, where they could tell you you were giving to a person. Now, there's considerable questions whether you actually were giving to that person. But it passed the transparency standards of that era. And I watched when Kiva came along. And when Kiva came along, all of a sudden, what people expected for giving you $50 in terms of control just went through the roof. Everybody liked the idea that they were in personal control and had a relationship. And I really think what this kind of giving, and I think actually the distinction whether it's for profit and a loan, is actually going to turn out long-term to be much less important. You'll have to solve the regulatory issues, you'll have to solve the tax issues. But you'll be able to have platforms that combine straight gifts, loans that don't earn anything, and equity investments that learn. And in fact, in the whole Muslim world, that's how you have to do it, is as equity investments. And what will make people succeed is the relationship that's created. It's not actually a financial proposition. It's a relationship form of giving. And I think it's actually just enormous and almost completely, nobody knows how it's going to work. Mm-hmm. But I think these early stories shouldn't discourage you, but I think you ought to create platforms that are designed for your purposes rather than thinking that Kickstarter is going to, because I don't think Kickstarter is. Yeah. It's got a different kind of audience.
Totally.
It has people who want to fix their hair.
Yeah, they want laser helmets, not necessarily to give lights to kids.
Can I actually make a comment? Because I know that was a positive light looking at this, but I'll tell you on my perspective, I'm actually a little scared. And I'll tell you why. Because I feel like we're putting control in the hands of people that don't know our sector, that might have even higher expectations than our investors do, even higher expectations than our donors do, in a way that we're finally having a dialogue in the financial investment space, which is giving the entrepreneur their voice to actually control what impacts need to be measured, what information needs to be delivered, what's realistic and what's not. We finally got here, right? Like I finally can tell my investor, seriously, women empowerment is not going to be measured for 5 years. Like, calm down. I'm not going to go right now and do it. But to tell someone who doesn't understand why and is coming with fresh eyes, the expectations to get that dollar actually might be more expensive and scary in a way that I don't know if we're very well equipped to see the outcome of that, And this is where, what you were talking about the other day of saying that, well, maybe we have to manage expectations in a different way.
Yeah, you have to set realistic expectations.
Where we say, look, you're not going to visit India. Mm-hmm. I'll send you a video that you can see, to be more realistic about what we set out. But I think that's my fear still, because I'm not sure whether we'll be successfully able to manage the expectation, but then still be successful in raising the funds that we want.
I think in energy access you have some immediate returns, though, that that we know that in swapping out a light, there is an immediate benefit that can be documented that you can report on. I'm going to ask a question to the audience real quick and take another question, but Sourabh, you guys I know are moving in a direction now, which I think is really interesting as a form of engagement, but it's also a way of crowdsourcing documentation and monitoring. You have this idea of doing follow your fund for lenders that have hit a certain. Can you just tell us a little bit about that, because I think it's really interesting on a couple of levels.
So I mean, we are facing constantly this challenge that the cost of giving updates to our lenders in terms of the impact. I mean, right now we give very basic updates that your repayments have come for a particular month, and of course we have the general videos coming up all together. But how do you actually give more detailed feedback in terms of the impact? So we have basically created a program called Follow Your Fund, where you raise funds from your social network or your immediate network. Whatever funds you raise, you choose the person whom you fund on the website, and then you fly down. You come down, you stay for 2 weeks, a month, or 3 months, whatever it requires, and you kind of report back. So you monitor the funds that they have been deployed properly, and then you kind of report back to your entire network, which help you fundraise this amount to show what kind of impact which is being created. So we are again giving that power in the hands of the people that impact is important. It's important for us as well, but we can't do it at a micro level. So why don't you help us in doing that? So that's I mean, it's an experiment which we are trying. Let's see how it goes.
Right, and I'll take a question here, but just real quickly, we've talked frankly about two initiatives that have had we've talked about the challenges that go along with that. But can anybody here in the room either something they directly participated in or that they're aware of a successful crowdfunding initiative that occurred through a platform that's related to energy access? Is anybody familiar with that?
I do. My background's fundraising, and I get what you're saying. You're putting power into the hands of people. But a lot of the time, what was great about the old model was the organizations that you put your money into the trust of. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
And
I didn't say this was a good thing.
It's a disruptive thing. Yeah.
So I don't know if there's a question in there other than where does this go? Is it going to be regulated? Because it frustrates the hell out of me that 16 days in we're on $2,500 and they raised $400 in 40 days.
Yeah, I mean, on our platform, for example, we see education profiles getting funded left, right, and center, and no one is funding toilets, because people don't understand, or it doesn't connect to them, So we kind of have to keep coming up with interesting campaigns to fund the toilets, whereas we don't have to do anything for education.
There was another, when I asked about examples of other campaigns that were successful, did you raise your hand? Oh, well, please, share.
We were, my friend and I, we were fundraising for to help this Ugandan NGO start a clean energy store that sells solar lanterns, water filters, cooks those types of low carbon products. And our goal was actually 2,000, so it was small. But really, we just leveraged our friends and family to do it, because that's what makes crowdfunding great, is that, if I ask my friend, can you write me a check or PayPal me $20, they're not going to do it. But if they can have a platform where they have, people can see that they donated, and that, I think the visibility aspect is actually really attractive for people to donate. So it's a lot easier. And also making it simple, just being able to use your credit card to pay versus writing a check. I mean, that's transformational in giving now. So so we raised 150% over our goal in 2 weeks, and we got that project funded, and the store is launched, and it's been selling products since February. So
fantastic.
So
through what platform was that?
Indiegogo.
You did it through Indiegogo?
And actually, just to advertise, the Energy Access Practitioner Network has a partnership page with Indiegogo. So any practitioner that wants to do a crowdfund on that platform gets a 2% discount through us.
We got it.
Yeah.
It's also it's the size of the project as well. So this was how much did you raise for that?
Oh, so we were actually just shooting for 2,000. We raised about 2,700, but we wanted to start small, because I think that's actually a mistake a lot of people make when they first start crowdfunding platforms. They think, okay, I'm gonna raise 50,000, 100,000. I want to be like Gravity Light and raise 400,000 because my solution's better.
Right.
And that rarely happens. I think Indiegogo told us that 90% of the projects on their platform are only friends and family funded. So only 10% actually get strangers to donate. It's very rare. So you can't go into it thinking that you're going to get the world to donate to your great idea. You got to use your networks.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, the size of the project, really, because at the same time, you want to go there and try to raise that funding and deliver on that promise that you made. Now, if you know your project is 20K and then you went with 5,000, so obviously you set up yourself to fail from the beginning. So again, it's just like a dynamic that you have to deal with in terms of, okay, do I go and try to lower the goal so that I can reach it, and not being able to deliver on the promise that I made, or do I tell the story for what it is, and then we see what happens? In our case, we knew that with our project, 50K was kind of like really high bar to clear, but we said to ourselves, so if we go and we raise $20,000, we will not be able to rebuild the factory. So therefore, we rather just tell people exactly what is the cost and what we are looking for. And if we reach it, then we can certainly deliver on this promise that we made, and if not, then people would know that we
I just thought we were just way too over aggressive. But that's just. I mean,
you learned. It's your first time.
Well, when people are like, "Hello, you raised for 500 kids," that's great, and I'm like, right. But if you look at the spectrum of what percentage we achieved for what we were targeting, it doesn't look as attractive. I think what's interesting though, and this is why I actually want to ask you guys this question about the value of putting it into your website.
But one secret sauce I'll tell you is when you have to create a kind of momentum around it. So we wanted to adopt 35 students get fully funded. but we only put like some 14 on the site, and before we launched the campaign, we had 10 of our most prolific lenders already ready for adopting students. So the day the campaign went online, 10 students were adopted already. So you kind of hit that model that we need more profiles, and almost 14 students are funded, and then you kind of slowly increase it, and in the end we managed to fund 40 students.
Yeah,
So
we've done some similar things where nobody wants to fund a project that has 0 funders.
Yeah.
So we might try to time the launch of a project when we know a lot of people are getting repaid from other projects. And, when recycling of money happens.
Yeah.
And I heard also, some people trick that as well. Have their friend kind of like, go and fund it and get the money back through the back door so that they can get it. I mean,
Well, what we were actually, ARC is a partner of Milaap's actually, and so there was a lot of reasons why the partnership made sense. We loved the idea of, we're all about catalyzing and proving that energy finance works, and that was exactly what they were putting money into, and was helping us with that mission. But also we put our own loan fund into it, $100,000, and Milaap is matching that basically dollar for dollar. So it's a great way for us to basically double the impact of that, and that's been really good. I think one of the things too that I myself actually did a little mini campaign as well. I ran a marathon in Singapore, and the thing that to me that was most remarkable about that is that my 92-year-old grandmother, who I can't believe has a Facebook account, but I put it out there, and she gave me $100. But I know, although she is on Facebook, but there's no way that she was ever going to make her way to the Milaap site. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So you're really, you're just
money.
leveraging a group of people out there that just there's no chance that they would have come, and that's a huge type of breakthrough. I want to ask just another question, and then we'll take another question as well. We have a little bit of time. There is the issue with, you're hooking up with partners here where you want to offer a consistent long-term line of credit. And you need to be able to project or predict how much money is coming in. So obviously, there's an unpredictability that's built into how much money you can raise off the platform. So you bring in other, tell them about the whole sort of way in which that you sort of smooth that out.
We raise funds online, but there's a lot of fundraising which we do, which is offline, which is done by me, which is high touch, which we go to foundations, we go to corporates, we go to the art finances of the world, where we raise this corpus money, and basically whichever borrowers don't get fully funded in a specific amount of time, we have to use this corpus money to kind of fill in the remaining buffer, and then make sure that the field partners are getting the entire money which is promised, because that relationship is very, very important. If you promise them $50,000 and you give them 35, they are not going to respect you, or you can't ask them repayments as promptly as you would do otherwise. So that equation needs to be very, very well maintained. So we are always conservative in terms of our field partners always give us a demand every month, 30-day and 90-day projections. We always say that we are only going to fulfill 60% of the demand, or in worse, times we used to say only 50% or 20% of demand. So that way you have to manage the expectation on the both sides, supply side, demand side.
Right.
The way we manage that is, let's say there's a solar company, we want to have a $100,000 financing agreement with them. We will create these, we call them master loan agreements, and we'll start small with maybe a $10,000 or $20,000 project. Put that on SunFunder.com. We know we can get that funded fairly quickly. So we do that, make that first loan, and then we can do follow-on loans very easily. It's all set up in the agreements where you don't have to renegotiate anything. And both through crowdfunding and from raising private sources of funding, we're able to manage it where it kind of smooths things out and allows us to do one chunk at a time instead of putting up this $100,000 project and let it sit there for several months.
Right. Any other questions?
This wasn't a question, but your question earlier of what other platforms are out there, and one that doesn't exactly fit here, but I think there's some really good lessons from it, is called Homestrings. I don't know if any of you all are familiar with it or work with Homestrings, but it is a way for the diaspora to invest in infrastructure bonds in their home country, Homestrings, right? So the Nigerian market has one, Ghana has some, Kenya, I think, Senegal has some, Bangladesh, yeah. And what's interesting about it is it taps into diaspora funds, and it also taps into this long-term capital issue that a lot of these infrastructure projects have. It's definitely a larger scale than what we're talking about, but I just think something to flag that if you haven't checked out their website, you should check it out. It's really interesting, and something I think needs to exist like that for the smaller scale as well. But just just encourage you to check it out.
Home strings?
Yep. Like my home. I'm a string attached to my home or something like that.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent you start seeing those initiatives in smaller and larger scale. Social Express, for instance, is one example where they are leveraging the diaspora to get products to the Haitians and Haiti, and this model has been also seen a lot more remittances companies sending food, and they're not looking at a whole range of products. So I know there's one company right now that's actually allow people to send raw materials local. They work with local suppliers, and then you can actually pay for the rebar or the cement that you need to rebuild your house or family's house. So we started seeing this kind of model that's very interesting in leveraging the diaspora, because oftentimes they have more capital, and they can actually pay and perhaps access to credits, and it's easier for them to actually get credits even within the local banks in the US or even in Haiti, because the banks also started looking at okay, can we leverage the wealth of the diaspora as a way to provide credits locally? So I think this is something that's evolving.
Yeah. Well, we have direct experience with that, but you wanted to add something, Nikki?
So you just actually sparked a thought, which is one of my favorite campaigns that I've seen dealing with this kind of thing is Mama Cash, which is a company that encourages goods remittances to Nigeria. And there's a wonderful ad for it where there's a chap who's calling his girlfriend on the phone, and she's all soft and sweet and, oh darling, so lovely that you remembered, and you see the panic on his face. And he realizes he's forgotten something really important, but he can't work out quite what it is. And he's sweet talking her on the phone, and meanwhile he's got the internet in front of him, and he's realizing that he's missed their anniversary. And he keeps her on the phone, and he sends her a goat in the process, and as the phone call, just as it's ending, the goat's coming in through the door. The idea, obviously it wouldn't be this fast, but it was just that lovely idea that you can, do that kind of thing. What I wanted to do, was ask you, Sourabh, if you could also explain the diversity of the organizations on the energy side, because one of the things we were very interested in was that you've got a microgrid, you've got an organization that's doing microgrids, you've got an organization that's doing solar, you've got an organization that's got some cook stoves in it. So for us also, we were able to leverage our 100,000 in a way that was giving us quite a range of impact, which was kind of fun. So I wondered about the thought process, whether it was accidental or intentional.
No, I mean for us, we always look at the product and what the impact that product is creating on the ground. We are not restricted by geography, so we're all the way. I mean, we are based in Bangalore, which is in southern India, and we are all the way giving out loans in West Bengal. We're all the way giving out loans in Manipur. Although there can be enough demand in southern India as well, but because for us the project is very, very important, and the product and the service which is being provided, which is why we want to go with as many interesting products which have that viability and have that demand. Yeah.
One thing I want to add too, so being the India program manager at ARC, I work very directly with, ARC basically comes in and helps provide business development services for these MFIs that have not done energy yet and need advice. So I think one of the things that's really important about Milaap, the example in West Bengal, you can see some of the posters that we have here actually, or pictures taken about a month ago of that site. Milaap's money is, because it's flexible and it gives the MFI a lot of room to move around, it allows them to fail a little bit or have setbacks. And that is hugely important. In the context of India, the story of energy microfinance has been many, many pilots and very little else. Because if something goes wrong, there's an exit. So we saw that directly. I mean, this MFI didn't quite have the right messaging. We went in there, told them to redirect to their existing clients, talk about the specific benefits that it has within the context of their lives, do demonstrations for the community, Now it's really starting to pick up. I mean, it's really, they probably will have 30% penetration by the end of Diwali. But they wouldn't have had that patience, I don't think, or the ability or the luxury to sort of fail a little bit if it was more stringent terms for that. So that's a really important.
But I think there's also a point about like who's essentially taking responsibility for the finance they want to distribute, right? I mean, at the end of the day, and this goes back to whether you should get that money from a crowdfunding platform or somewhere else. Like we took, you know, it took me it was a 5-minute conversation with a specific donor to get $30,000 to do a line of credit pilot for, you know, energy entrepreneurs. 5 minutes, like sat there, had to, and then like went 15 minutes, you know, drew out a proposal because I was very clear about what I wanted to do. I wanted to provide a line of credit to my entrepreneurs on the ground and rotate it. And I knew I didn't need a lot of money for it. I just wanted to prove a business model that these guys are fundable, and if you rotate their capital, they'll do a better job selling product because they're not blocking their own. Because it was within sector and it was a donor that actually wants to do innovation in energy, it wasn't difficult to sell the story. It was a very easy transaction, and I was able to complete my project and actually hand it over to a rural bank that's now providing credit to my entrepreneurs. And so that process was so much smoother than it was to then try to do a crowdfunding platform and do all these other different, like, you know, dances around trying to get the story out for those entrepreneurs. So I think it varies person to person about like what is the right platform for you, and you know, how do you define yourself.
For sure.
So.
I think we're winding down here. Are there any other questions from the audience at all? We have Saiful in the back.
So where do you see this crowdfunding going in next 3 years? Let's say 3 to 5 years. Where do you see?
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me, I have really big plans of crowdfunding. I mean, I want to make it part of everyday activity of people's life. I want to make it as prevalent and as present everywhere, such that you can, you know, how you shop online or how you go out fine dining. It should be, you know, making loans on Milaap or any other platform should be as easy and as part of your everyday activity of your life as brushing teeth. And that is the vision which I have, but I think there's a long way before we can hit that.
I think it's.
No, I was just going to say that I think crowdfunding is there to stay, but I do think like, you know, it's going to be very still, you know, innovation driven, like, you know, product that are innovative, that are kind of like, you know, that next frontier, that new development, or that new kind of sexy product. I think that's where you're gonna see, because I think that's what, you know, people are usually want to be part of, that first generation of, yeah, I invested in that particular product, that is the next big thing, you know. I think like, you know, for crowdfunding for things like, you know, we've tried to do, probably is gonna be, you know.
Well, I'm also wondering, hearing some of the, you know, like the story that we heard here of an Indigo campaign that was a friends and family one that was on a certain scale. Sure, maybe this doesn't work for a $50,000 infrastructure project, but are there other uses within your organization? You know, have somebody adopt a distributor and gets working capital and it's friends and family. You know what I mean? So are there other uses that can be done, applied within your?
I do think so. I do think so. And as a matter of fact, this is something that we will start, you know, looking into once we, because right now we are developing our network of distributors, and we are looking at ways to extend, you know, financing options to our distributors. So obviously that this is going to be part of what we're looking at, because then you could, it's much easier to raise, like, you know, $200 versus like, you know, $50K, and just like, you know, if you don't have something very innovative and very kind of appealing to give.
Did you, Ryan, and then?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, crowdfunding's still quite new, even though, I mean, all of us probably hear about it every other day. All over the country and the world, there are so many people that have never come across this concept. And maybe this is a bad example, but my parents don't even have a Facebook account. But you know, when I started working on SunFunder,
You should talk to my 93-year-old grandmother. Get them hip to that.
What the hell is crowdfunding? I think there's so many people that this hasn't really.
Yeah, you're right.
Yes, that's what I hope, that, you know, it really reaches that mass market.
I just think that the model's going to change about who's going to use it, and how. I mean, I think it's all about the collaboration. I mean, if you even look at like how financing came about for microfinance, not every microfinance institution went out there to talk to investors or banks that could raise money. They started finding Unitas' of the world, or ARC Finances of the world, that would actually help them leverage a platform. And I think that that's really where I see this going. I think that again, I think that the folks that are working on the ground, they have the stories, they have the content, but I think that the way to make this scale more effectively and create more checks and balances is if you have more collaboration with the platform providers, the folks that understand this, and then the folks that are on the ground, right? So I think that the bridge is where this could potentially be very successful and big, or disastrous if the wrong people try doing it, you know.
Yeah.
Or they fund gravity light.
Right. Well, there's
Right, exactly.
or fraud. I mean, there's just,
Right.
fraud has been a problem
So
with
much
Indiegogo,
noise.
and that can pose another thing.
I mean, again, and I said, like, we were like, when we were talking, I was saying, like, we fell, but actually we gained something. And quite frankly, what we've gained is, I don't think, like, if we did not do the crowdfunding campaign, we would have gotten the $500,000 that we got, because what ended up happening is somebody saw me on BBC and interested in what I was doing, and suddenly, like, says, okay, well, there's this fund that you actually can get financing with zero interest if you can deliver on some of the impact. I mean, it's still, we have to repay. It's just 0%, interest if we can deliver on the impact that we said. But he actually saw that through, like, the marketing that we were trying to push that. So it's, again, it's just,
I mean, that's hugely valuable. You succeeded indirectly then. So I think that we have run out of time, but I want to very much thank the panel for really good insights into a pretty exciting and fast evolving practice. And I think we're done with this, and I think we have one last. Okay, thank you. You're welcome.
And thanks to Chris for excellent moderation. Getting all sorts of questions out from people.